Welcome, and now back onto the 90th episode of the Late Night Veteran Show, which is registered and approved by the British Armed Forces. I'm one of the hosts for tonight. My name is R.A. McLeod Argue. We also have Darren, the CEO. Adam's another host. And then we also have Tim, our MEFQuin advocate, and two amazing guests, which Adam's going to introduce. Before I get Darren to drop the button, please take a few seconds during our video introduction that is soon to follow. Get yourself some tea, get some coffee. You don't want to miss the show tonight. Now, Darren, drop that button.
I pledged allegiance to the flag God stood beside me. I swore an oath to my countrymen and kin. Side by side we sang our anthem oh so proudly. And this is where a soldier's tale begins. We left for foreign shores in the name of freedom, comrades in arms for the liberty of man. Shoulder to shoulder, but still could not redeem them in God's name, but no one could understand.
Hello and welcome to the Late Night Veteran Show, episode 90. I'm your host, Darren Edmundson. We have some very special guests on tonight, but before I hand over to Adam to introduce them to the guest, I'm going to give a couple of updates. But just before I do that, I'm going to try and get Andrew Bridgend back on the screen. Andrew, if you can hear me, if you can drop out and come back in, that would be great. I think when we play the credits, you can drop yourself out. So if you can drop yourself out and back in, fantastic. So a couple of updates there. We are 13,000 followers, nearly hitting 14,000 followers on our social medias on TikTok. So thank you to that. The platform's growing really. Another as well, which we'd like to thank the Reginald Argue show for taking over on the production side of teams, and a big shout out to Lisa Argue, who is the World Liaison Officer. So thank you very much for that. So Adam, I'm going to hand you over to Adam. Adam Scarborough is our UK host. Adam, take it away.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining, particularly Andrew and Piers. We have, as Reginald said, two very, very special guests tonight, heroes of the freedom movement, one and only Piers Corbyn, right in front of me, and also thanks for joining us, Andrew. We've got Andrew Bridgend as well. So two true heroes of the freedom movement who have been through hell over the last 5 years. I'm sure I'm not exaggerating when I use those terms. And do you want to continue now, Darren, or do you want to come back in there?
Yes, please, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us tonight, because we got you along with Piers here. And it's a kind of unique situation because you and Piers are really from polar opposite side of the political spectrum. Piers, as you know, being a lifelong, should we say, socialist, quote unquote, and you being a former member of the Tory party. So the amazing thing is that we do have common ground here, and I think it's been the freedom movement that has enabled that to happen. So there's Andrew Bridgend in front of me, probably the only honest politician to enter Parliament in the last 2,000 years. He's with us tonight. And just to reiterate, Piers Corbyn there as well. Piers has been described as the Aunt Sally, the guy lying dead in the middle of the road, the gunslinger. He's an amazing guy, and we've all endured amazing experiences over the last 5 years. I first met Piers Corbyn in Hyde Park in 2020 when I'd never seen him before. I knew he was Jeremy's brother, but he was knocked to the floor. And have you still got that coat, Piers? You know the coat where you were knocked to the floor? You fell down so many times in that. You did an amazing break.
Yeah, I've got all those things, yes. That was May the 16th, 2020, I believe. And I was arrested by 40 police.
Yeah, 40, only 40. What about the other 40?
Only 40, yeah.
but I must do a video on it sometime. And it's great to have Andrew with us as well. Andrew Bridgend, as you know, former Tory MP, very much in the, not so much the legacy media, but the alt media. And Andrew has been the only politician, I think, and I don't know if you verify that, the only politician to speak the truth over the last 5 years. So on tonight's show, I thought we could have like an interaction between all of us, but mainly between Andrew and Piers. I was going to put a few comments or suggestions to them, mainly being a bit reminiscent over what's happened the last 5 years. And so we can go from there, if that's okay. And may I say, from a mental health perspective, I think both Andrew and Piers, you've weathered well over the last 5 years. I think you'll verify that, Piers. I mean, Piers level, both Piers and Andrew, their levels of endurance are amazing. You know,
I identify as 29. That helps.
Right. But I mean, I think we've been in some amazing situations over the last few years. But I think with one embassy where we went in and you fell to the floor and we had armed police around us, and I think that unloaded weapons at the time. But that was one of the most poignant.
Australia House, yes.
That was the one. That was one. So as I say, the freedom movement became a place where the right of the left and the left of the right congregated against the oligarchs of the WEF. Millions of the left sort of dropped away any socialist stance. Not millions. I think the only leftist group that was with us on the demos was one called, I think, the Spartanist League, the Socialist Workers' Party, Extinction Rebellion. All those leftist groups, none of them joined us. And the amazing thing was these were people who were saying Johnson was an absolute monster until he brought in the injection. Then they loved him all of a sudden. You know, the way they changed was just incredible. We've all come through hell, and at the same time there's been a COVID inquiry, but and at the same time we know that it's been a mockery in a way. But if we don't go along with it, then we're losing the opportunity. Do you have any thoughts on the COVID inquiry, Andrew? You know, and the Scottish one, there were some heartbreaking tales being told from people. But if we abstain from doing it, then we're not getting a voice at all. So I think part of the reason we wanted to go, because we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We wanted to at least get some publicity is better than none at all, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think the Scottish Code inquiry was far superior to the one that was held in Westminster by Baroness Hallett.
Yes.
And I think she was linked to the Iraq inquiry as well. So I think she's got a bit of form on being involved in pretty good cover-ups. But at least the Scottish inquiry did try and at least shed some light on what happened in the care homes with the vulnerable elderly, midazolam and morphine. I've been working with the Dimmock family for 4 years to get, and I managed to write to the coroner at Southwark some years ago and got an inquest into the death of Derek Dimmock with midazolam and morphine in 2020. I think it was June 2020. And I've learned an awful lot about what went on during COVID. I mean, there were a few MPs willing to say a few words about the vaccines. Not what I was willing to say, and the truth I stand by. But nobody else was willing to talk about NICE Guideline 163, brought in by Matt Hancock on, I think it was the 3rd or 4th of April 2020, whereby the treatment for vulnerable elderly who weren't considered fit enough to go on a ventilator, they were given midazolam and morphine. And it's very interesting that we've uncovered an NHS reminder warning letter that came out on the 18th of March 2020, so about 16 days before they issued the instructions for NG 163. And this is a reminder never to use a benzodiazepine and an opiate. Yeah. And midazolam is a benzodiazepine, and obviously morphine is an opiate, because it said it will cause death by respiratory suppression. And 16 days later, they use that as a treatment for COVID-19. And I'm afraid that the vulnerable elderly, I believe, were involuntarily euthanized to create the first wave. They died breathless because that's the symptoms of having midazolam and morphine. And of course, the COVID-19 was put down on their death certificates. Because they were considered to be infected with COVID-19, there were no autopsies done, and the bodies were cremated within 24, 48 hours. So the evidence was gone, and there was absolutely tens and tens of thousands of people had that done to them. And we've actually got, we've been running in this inquest into the death of Derek Dimmock, and it's been running on for well over a year. The evidence is absolutely overwhelming that he was killed by the treatments he was given. The poor chap only went in for respite care for gout, and he was dead by the end of the weekend. They put him on end-of-life drugs within an hour of arriving at the hospice for respite care. And I don't see how they're going to get out of it. But because it's so difficult for the government, they're just delaying and delaying, I'm sure, putting pressure on to delay the outcome of this inquest, because it's absolutely damning.
I did listen to that report, Darren. Not just midazolam and morphine, which you should never mix, but also they were also ventilating people, which is something you should never do unless someone's under very, very close.
Well, there's so many coincidences. The man who chaired the NICE committee that brought in NG 163 in April 2020 was a man called Sir Andrew Dillon. And he resigned from NICE within 4 or 5 weeks of NG 163 coming in. And then he took a job at the Trinity Hospice Trust, which was the hospice where Derek Dimmock was killed, I will maintain. And if you look at their recommendations for midazolam and morphine, it's exactly the same as NG 163, which wouldn't be surprising since their chairman had brought it in when he worked for NICE. And guess what? On the first day in 2025, in March, of the Derek Dimmock inquest, Sir Andrew Dillon resigned as chairman of the Royal Trinity Hospice Trust.
My God, it's just, there's been so many, as you say, coincidences. My own mother died. Well, I won't mention the hospital. I couldn't be there to hold her hand while Johnson was having his party, believe it or not.
Exactly. I mean, I actually realise now, you know, the reason why the Nightingale hospitals were never used.
Yeah, Nightingale and Elizabeth. Yeah, I mean, they were empty, weren't they?
They were empty because they were completely open plan. They couldn't have killed people with midazolam and morphine without everybody noticing, as the syringes went up and the bodies went out. So they did it in care homes and nursing homes instead. And you're right. I mean, Boris Johnson was the only Prime Minister I ever voted for to be Prime Minister, actually became Prime Minister. And I was the first MP to call for him to go after Partygate came out.
Yeah.
I mean, in North West Leicestershire, my constituency was the highest economic growth in the country and the happiest place to live in the Midlands in 2019. And then we went into COVID. I got more people committing suicide in North West Leicestershire in a month of lockdown than we normally had in a year. And then I found out, obviously, about Partygate, and that was amazing. So in December 2021, I got the impression the government were going to lock us down again.
Yeah.
And then I got I had good suspicions they were going to knock us down for another Christmas, which would have been devastating for the economy and people's mental health and well-being because of how important Christmas is. And I then, the first week in December, I got an invite to go to a party at number 10, drinks party. And I wrote back to number 10 and said, it can't be right. I think you're going to lock us down. I'll vote against this. I'm not in favour of it. And if you're going to lock us down again in a couple of weeks' time, we can't be having social functions now. And the week after, I got another invite to another party. And by that time, they'd announced basically they were going to lock us down again. So I again wrote back and said it's completely inappropriate to have social events when you're going to lock us down in a week's time. Again, I will vote against it. I'll speak against it. It's completely inappropriate. And then, of course, Partygate broke, and I realised they knew it was going to break, and they were trying to get every MP's hands in the blood, you see.
Yeah.
And it was worse than that, because I got to a civil servant, and most of Downing Street is offices. In fact, it's all one building. So number 9, number 10, and number 11 are all one building. It's mostly offices, and lots and hundreds of civil servants work there, and some of them are pretty diligent people. And one of them, during the lockdowns, he'd emailed his boss and said, look, don't you think we ought to social distance and mask because we're inflicting it on the country? And the answer came back to him that from his boss that there was no point because we've checked it out with the scientists and none of it works. But because the cameras are outside, when you leave the building, can you please ensure that you socially distance and put your mask on when you leave the building?
See, can I just say, with Boris Johnson, I spoke to me and a couple of other squaddies. We were outside down the street a couple of days later, and I said to the chief of police, why did your police, the Metropolitan Police, the armed division of them, allow them into Partygate? So straight away he tries to divert the question by saying, what about you lot in Northern Ireland, meaning the British Army in Northern Ireland? He can't answer the question. That's the chief.
It's called deflection.
That's
why they were announcing it on their emails as bring a bottle. Now, over the years, with lots of prime ministers, I've had lots of functions at number 10 Downing Street. And I can assure you, they never asked you to bring your own drink. They've got a copious cellar paid for by the taxpayer. But obviously, to have a party there during lockdown, there'd have been a paper trail of the alcohol that was used. That's why they were asking them to bring their own alcohol in from Tesco's up the road in the shopping trolley. It's because they knew they were doing wrong and they didn't want a paper trail for the alcohol taken from the cellar.
They're not very good at it. They're not very good at being criminals, are they? Because we wouldn't have found out if they were good at it. Do you have any thoughts on that, Piers? The Partygate? Any memories of that particular occasion? Piers, do you have any particular memories of Partygate?
Well, yes, I do remember Partygate going on and being completely shocked. You see, the powers that be know what they're doing. They're playing games for us, and unfortunately, a lot of people, public and in the movement, comply with the trickery. But I think on earlier points, it's worth making that we knew from the start that the COVID inquiry in Britain, in the United Kingdom one, as opposed to the Scotland one, was a cover-up. And I think when it comes to talking about left and right unity, which you mentioned, that to my mind, the left and right labels are useless. What we need to understand is we've got a struggle of accountability, democratic accountability is what we stand for, and evidence-based politics and science versus globalist tyranny. And to fight that, we've got to be practical. We've got to break up their narratives, their fake narratives that they're imposing on us all the time, and of course do practical actions, which we do all the time. I mean, I'm involved in things every week. I mean, one very important practical action always is keep cash, because if we can all keep cash, they cannot impose digital money on us. Latest thing they've got is they want us to all have monitoring of water usage through smart water meters. Well, they don't care a damn about the water because it'll rain sooner or later, whatever. So this is about control. It's about monitoring and control. So I think, you know, we have to do practical actions all the time. I would just make a point about some of the left, like the Socialist Workers' Party and so forth. They wouldn't join with us because they believe in the COVID con and they believe in the climate con. And we have to overcome what I call the conspiratorium upon us now, whereas fake sciences are brought in to push forward fake narratives. And I think the fake sciences we should know about are virology, pretending that, you know, COVID was real when it was just flu. The greenhouse effect, which doesn't work, it's nonsense. Man-made climate change doesn't exist. And of course, geoengineering, which claims mankind can control all sorts of things in the sky, which is just completely untrue. The energy of nature is much too high for man to control. So all these claims about chemtrails and so on are actually a game to distract us from what, and I want to mention this point, from what Elon Musk is up to, because 30 kilograms of aluminium oxide is dropped in the sky every day from crashing satellites, and he wants to make it 50 times more. So he loves it when people go on about aeroplanes up there doing things which they're not doing, and I wouldn't be surprised if he funds these people. Anyway, I'll stop there, but the key message I have is practical action to break the legs of New World tyranny at every turn,
I would
ideologically and physically on the ground.
I would agree with a lot of what Piers has said. This left-right narrative is just a way of persuading dividing the public up and persuading them that they've got some choice. I think you are either an authoritarian or a libertarian, and I didn't realise what a libertarian I was until I saw how authoritarian the establishment are, and they're becoming increasingly authoritarian. And if we let in things like digital ID, and then we'll follow on with the digital currency, which they must have that for Agenda 2030. I think it's laughable that our new unelected Prime Minister, the sixth one we've had in 7 years, Andy Burnham, he said he's going to cancel the digital ID project. Well, he's not. I can assure you.
Well, he hasn't done it yet, has he? Of course, he's not.
He hasn't. He hasn't
bringing
stopped
it in by backdoor methods.
He hasn't even stopped Starmer's plans for banning us all from social media next spring unless we can demonstrate we're over 16 with digital ID. I think he's going to call a general election before then, because he will be seen through for what he is, and I think he's going to look at the polls. I think he could go this autumn to the country while he's told a whole load of lies before he gets found out, and it's very dangerous. Piers talked about smart water, smart meters, everything's smart cities. SMART stands for surveillance, monitoring and reporting technologies. And you remember that Labour bought in the Brit card, and it didn't stand for British. That was biometric registration, identification and tracking. And everyone thought, I'll have a Brit card. It's patriotic.
That's so cool, doesn't it?
They'll have to find another acronym. And as Andrew said, I mean, he's highlighted the last 5 years, and I think so much has happened over the last 5-6 years that it's very easy to forget certain fine details. Like, for example, Andrew mentions the care homes. Doctors were so terrified, from what I know, of going in care homes to diagnose bodies with the flu. And let's face it, influenza did kill a lot of people in 2018, but doctors were so afraid to go into care homes that nurses were writing COVID-19 on every single corpse, which allowed the government to bring in the coronavirus legislation.
Absolutely.
There was that. And as for Boris Johnson's dishonesty, there's no limit to it, because I do know someone who worked at the hospital where Johnson said he went in with COVID, with all the cameras, and he was on the stretcher to meet him. He got out and he got up and he walked out of the mortuary entrance, and he was back at work.
It
didn't take you long to get better, did it?
I spoke in London last year, and a very senior NHS doctor attended, and he confided in me that they all know at St Thomas's that Boris Johnson checked out of St Thomas's the evening he checked in, and he didn't come back for 6 days, and the ward was completely sealed. And it's very telling that the two nurses that he claimed had saved his life, neither were UK nationals, and neither of them were in the NHS within 3 months after that. They just disappeared off the face of the earth. And if he'd been there for 6 days, he wouldn't have just had two nurses, would he?
Yeah, and when we're talking about this man's personality profile, we're looking at, let's look what he's done recently. This is a man. I'm a Falklands veteran, and war is no fairy tale. I always believe make love, not war, destroy power, not people. This is a man who flew to the Ukraine to stall the peace process. Whatever you might think about Vladimir Putin, he flew to the Ukraine to try and stop peace. He can sleep well at night, knowing that he did that. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than that, does it? In my opinion.
No, well, but we remember the Russians mysteriously pulled away from outside Kiev after 4 weeks. I mean, the answer was they'd already initialed the peace agreement. It was brokered by Benjamin Netanyahu's predecessor in Israel and President Erdogan of Turkey, and it was all agreed. And then apparently Joe Biden told Boris Johnson he'd got to go over there and tell them to fight on. So basically, all the deaths in Ukraine on both sides after 4 weeks. That's in Boris Johnson's lap.
Yeah.
And he shilled for the military-industrial complex relentlessly since then, coming out and telling us we've got to fight a war, get ready for a war with Russia. He's bought and paid for, I'm afraid.
Yeah. And I mean, my friend was doing security out there. He showed me piles of Ukrainian women's bodies and rows of corpses, that could have been prevented. I mean, even if you look at Napoleon's thoughts on the art of war and power, he said, if you know you're going to lose men, come back, retreat for another day. I think over the last 5 years, I mean, it's been said by an Irish friend of mine, said what kept us going was, he said, there's something in our DNA. This is from an Irish perspective, the Anglo-Saxon DNA, that made us get up and say, you're not going to lock us in our houses. You're not going to do this. And you mentioned some of your constituents, Andrew, that suffered with sensory deprivation. When someone's locked in a cell for hours and days.
Well, I mean, some people, I mean, I used to go on Sky News during the lockdowns, and they were all happy. They were all working from home. And I said, look, you've probably got a big house and a garden. What about somebody who's in a bedsit flat, with young children and not enough computers to go around? They're not having a good lockdown, are they?
Yeah.
They're not having a good lockdown.
Yeah.
It was all right for some people. And it certainly was all right for the people who are in the Westminster bubble and the media bubble in London. But I mean, also, it really devastated children.
Heartbreaking.
I mean, if you're in your 50s like I was when the lockdowns come, it's uncomfortable, but it's a couple of years of your life. If you're 2 till you're 4, it's half your life.
Yeah.
It's half your life, and the effects on shutting those schools down, and that social distancing and the lack of interaction. I mean, it's scarred a whole generation of children, and I don't know how we're going to make it up to them. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to. But when I asked the government in Parliament to do the best thing they could for mental health, which would be assure the country we'd never do it again, they refused to do it.
Yeah. I mean,
despite the fact they knew that everything that was put forward actually wasn't scientific, and it was designed about control.
Yeah. And when we're looking at long periods of, I've worked in jails over the years, century and lockdown and incarceration, a person will develop antisocial traits and what Desmond Morris called anti-explorational behaviour, walking in circles. If you go to a zoo, you see that amongst other animals, other primates. So there was never anything better. And they were using this term, and they stopped using it early in the scamdemic, which was a new normal. So they tried to get people to think as abnormal behaviour as being normal, which is frightening, which is actually terrifying in itself. If you think of a new normal, which no one can define, and who wrote the rules here? Who wrote these rules about new normal? But they did stop using it, and they started using the term "build back better" instead.
I think it was King Charles Prince Charles at the time, King Charles, that said he was the first one to say afterwards that we need a great reset, didn't he?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, I think we do need a great reset, but not the one the globalists are thinking of, quite honestly. And I think the good news is, I knew things were not right in politics. I knew there was corruption. I knew there was child abuse. I didn't think it was as endemic as it is. It's everywhere, the corruption. But I mean, COVID slapped me wide awake. And the trouble for them is when people are awake, I don't know what the government can do or the media to put them back to sleep. I mean, I don't actually own a television now. I won't watch television.
Yeah. And see, I think the reason a lot of people, particularly those that are suffering with vaccine damage now, don't want to talk about it is because denial is a good way of coping with trauma. And when it comes to censorship, it's essential people see what's happening. Many of you of a certain age will remember photographs coming back from Vietnam of that little girl burning alive with napalm. Terrible as it was, that photograph started a big anti-war movement that led to the end of the Vietnam War. So censorship isn't a good thing. People ultimately, we have to deal with reality with a capital R, don't we?
We do, and I saw reality. I mean, in autumn 2022, when the government wanted to vaccinate down to babies of 6 months with the COVID vaccines, children who were at no risk whatsoever from COVID, but by that time I knew they were at risk from the vaccines. I went to senior colleagues I'd been working with in Parliament for 12 years, people I trusted and respected, and said, look, stand with me, we can stop them doing this. And the number that agreed with me and then said they weren't going to say anything. that I was right, but they weren't going to get involved. One of them even admitted to me in November 2022 that he'd had 2 Pfizer jabs, gone to the gym, had terrible chest pains, gone to hospital, and they told him he'd had 2 heart attacks. And I said, I'm really sorry about that, but obviously we're not going to let them do this to the children, are we? And he said, you're on your own, mate. I'm not saying anything. And he had 2 heart, and he knew it was the vaccines.
Good grief.
Yeah. Well, Andrea Jenkins, who's now the Reform Mayor of Lincolnshire, I'd known her before she became an MP in 2015. She's the one that got rid of Ed Balls in Morley and Outwards originally. And she came to see me in July 2023 and told me that I was right about the vaccines. Only her and me. She was a minister at the time. And she said, I said, well, what's happened, Andrea? She said, my sister's taken a Moderna booster and now she's paralysed from the neck down. I said, I'm really sorry about that. But now you know you've got to speak out to protect your people. That's what you've got a duty. And she said, Andrew, it's not as straightforward as that. She said, my sister's a nurse. They coerced her into taking the vaccine. She's now at the complete mercy of the NHS because she's on a ventilator and a feeding tube. She said, and you know what the NHS are like with whistleblowers. She said, I'm not speaking out. And she never did. She walked away.
My God. Isn't that similar to your other parliamentary colleague, Craig McKinley, was it, who had a quadruple amputation? He refused.
Yeah, and the end of his nose.
He refused, yeah.
Well, he knows. He told me. He's my best friend.
Lord above. I've never seen anything quite like that.
Well, they put him in the House of Lords, keep him sweet.
Yeah. I mean, the tissue went necrotic, and he had to have a prosthesis.
He got the vaccine caused him his bowel to split, and he got sepsis, blood poisoning, and he was actually on end of life care at the hospital in Kent, and it was an excellent former colleague of mine, Adam Holloway. He's a former SAS officer. He went down there, didn't take any prisoners, and got him put into an ambulance. And the only way they stabilised him was bringing him up to St Thomas's, the hospital opposite Parliament. Yeah. But they had to remove both his arms and both legs. He had his arms amputated just below the elbow, and his legs amputated just below the knee, and the end of his nose, because he got
the video is on YouTube, by the way. If anyone wants to see that, it's quite horrific. Because we're not looking at someone that's attempted suicide. We're seeing someone who has got vaccine damage, and this is just one of many.
Well, what happened with Craig is when we got back from the lockdowns in our constituencies, and Parliament had basically been run by diktat, and Parliament wasn't working properly. Everyone was voting remotely from home. That's no good. When we got back together, because he was a really good mate, I went to see him and said, look, I said, what vaccines have you had? He said, I've had 2 Pfizer. I said, well, look, I said, I've had 2 AstraZeneca. We don't want to be having any more of these. They're toxic. There's something seriously wrong with these. And I thought he got it. And then he came to see me a few weeks later and he said, I'm not right, mate. I said, well, what do you mean you're not right? He said, I didn't listen to you. I've been and had a booster. He said, the moment it went in my arm, I knew something was wrong. And I feel bad and I'm getting worse. And he got worse and got worse. And then he was in hospital. And then a few months later, we heard he was dying. And that's when Adam went down and broke him out of hospital, got him into St Thomas's, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, the poor family. And
he's got a beautiful Hungarian wife, and he's got a little blonde princess of a daughter who was 6.
Yeah. My God. I mean, you'd think that. I mean, if someone did that to me, I mean, I know some guys that that ended up with one leg after the Falklands. You've got loads of medals, but the medals don't really account for you losing both legs. You have a specially made car. If someone did that to me, I can't. I mean, my response would be unrepeatable. But he just wants to be supine. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Human behaviour. We've learned so much about human behaviour.
Well, they actually got him because he was my best mate. A couple of years ago, they got him to ring me and tell me that if I didn't stop talking about what went on during the pandemic, campaigning about it and giving speeches, that they would destroy me.
Right.
And I said, well, mate, I said, they've taken my business off me with the help of my despicable younger brother and parents. I said, my wife left me because I didn't take the bribe they offered me. I said, they stopped me getting my private pension. They took my house off me with HS2 and gave me pittance for that. They took my job off me and fixed the election in 2024. I said, but I'll tell you what, mate. I said, they haven't cut my arms and legs off. And he went a bit quiet. And then he said to me, well, that's what they told me I'd got to tell you, Andrew. Now, that's power. That is power. When you can do that to someone and then get them to go and threaten somebody else, or put the squeeze on somebody else and tell them they've got to stop campaigning. And I was told by
for a moment, if I may. I want to basically see if we can open this up to conversation, because it's extremely important what Tim has to share with you, Andrew, because he is what here in Canada, there's a lot of veterans that have been going overseas that got this mefloquine. They're
the daughter is Larium.
And Larium, I'll let you go. Go ahead, Tim. You know an awful lot more than I do.
So it's nice to meet Andrew and Adam for the first time, and Piers, if you're still on. I'm not sure he's still on the call or not. My name's Tim Riley. I'm a retired corporal in the Canadian Airborne Regiment. I was in Operation Deliverance in Somalia back in 92, 93. And methaquine, which is an anti-malaria drug that Brits would call Larium. And I think it's still used in civilians in Canada under the name Larium. But when they gave it to me and my regiment in late 92, it was not licensed for use in Canada. So the pharmaceutical company, because it wasn't licensed in Canada, required the government to conduct a clinical drug trial on methaquine/Larium. And they didn't do that. They gave it to us unlicensed, untested. I was in Somalia for almost a month before they licensed it in Canada. I'm not sure how they did that. So everybody that was given the same drug afterwards, up to including Afghanistan, thought it was all licensed and tested, and it was not. So it affects the base your brain and your brainstem. I don't know all the medical terms, but it affects the part of your brain that affects your emotions. So I came back to a soldier's worst homecoming when I returned back to Canada, and I breached my own moral boundaries, committed domestic about 2 weeks later, and I own my stuff, and I took responsibility, but the government's not taking responsibility about methaquine, and to this day, they still want to delay and deny it 33 years later. So I'm in a unique situation where in Toronto, they have a children's hospital for sick children. It's Toronto Hospital for Sick Children. The D&D, Department of National Defense, sponsored a comparison study between soldiers that had PTSD and traumatic brain injuries. And I qualified because I had a TBI as a child, but I went with the motive to talk about methaquine. And I got 150 brain scans that shows measurably the areas of the brain that it's known to damage and collect in. And then because of that and some of my other unfortunate things that are at my own doing, there's a mass tort in Canada going on. Started in 2018. They put 9 people forward about 2022, and the government just stopped it for just find different tactics. And then a year and a half ago, I was asked to represent for administrative reasons from how they the system failed me. They didn't take I'm not sure due diligence is the right word or proper care. So I'm before the courts with 2 other people. The judge reserved his decision. I'm not expecting a positive outcome because if they open that door, it's like Pandora's box. It's going to be huge. But I still have some hope in the justice system. And I feel good about stepping up and, raising awareness about things where I can, because a lot of people don't know about it. Even a lot of soldiers up to Afghanistan, they just thought it was all a normal, approved, safe drug. And it's the same as what I got back in 1992 when I was unlicensed, untested.
Don't forget, the Americans basically did a test on that, and 38% of the people, right, and they're willing to accept the 38%, and they just continue using it. So
that was
we
done
have
about
to remember that. And don't forget about the great news that you have to share, Tim, too. Parliament in October. Got to share that too.
So I'll follow up with your thing. The American study was done in 1987. Just for anybody to, if they want to go check it out. And they tested about 600 people, 600 troops, and they deemed that 30% were known to have neurological, psychiatric or psychological side effects that mimic PTSD and TBIs. Something's going on.
Oh, Piers is trying to get back in.
Trying to get back in. Yeah.
So,
in
October, we're having a rally in Ottawa to raise awareness and have empowerment. Dr. Remington Nevin, I'm not sure he's well known over in the UK or not. I think so. He's an epidemiologist that specializes in quinine. He's kind of like the person to go to that talks about methaquin/delirium. And he'll be speaking on the Saturday of the rally, and then Sunday we're gonna march with Tim the Unknown Soldier to Parliament Hill to do some speeches. And I was asked to stay the next day. I was invited to a question period in Parliament along with some other veterans. My service dog's getting them from under my desk here. Lay down, Karen. So that's to stay afterwards, after question period, talk to some members of Parliament and a few senators that are open to hearing about methaquin. But something that I think the WHO are behind and the UN are behind, to be honest, because it was big in the 90s and 2000s internationally. So that's just, I want to, just raise that and ask Andrew know about it.
I was reading up on lyrium, and although it says it's used to combat malaria, once it goes into the psychiatric effects, it's dwarfed. The alleged effect of malaria is dwarfed by the psychological problem. Really, basal tardive dyskinesia, and you mentioned the facial contortions. I mean, they call it side effects, but there's dozens of side effects of that drug, lyrium. Yeah.
Adam, can I just interrupt there? We're going to go into the Professor's Corner ad break. We're halfway through the show. We're going to go into an ad break. You guys, you've got 2 minutes to go to the toilet, whatever you need. We'll play the Professor's Corner and we'll be straight back. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Welcome to the Professor's Corner. The poem that I wrote and I'm going to share tonight is called Scars and Tattoos. So here we go. Looking through the mirrors of life, we see the battles, struggles, trials, and tribulations we have overcome. We want to celebrate because we've witnessed a rainbow cutting through our past darkness. Its brilliant colors shimmer and sparkle in our thoughts, where we envision a future brighter than the one we currently live in. Using our imagination as a vehicle to ride across our life pathway on the back of a golden chariot coming from the ancient times of the Roman Empire, we never stop moving forward, even in the face of hardships. Through both days and nights, we continue our journey over the mountaintops of adversities, one step at a time. Through both days and nights, we continue our journey over the mountaintops of adversity. Through both days and nights, we continue our journey over the mountaintops of adversity, one step at a time. Even when we feel utterly exhausted and worn out, we persist, becoming the spearhead of positive change. We travel through the fiery pits of hell and seeing the brilliant, shining gates of heaven. We find ourselves as a last line of defense in protecting others. A duty and obligation we were born into is a pledge and honor that we have sworn to uphold until our last breath in this world. Through it all, we wear our scars and tattoos as symbols of honor, uniting us with our brothers and sisters. Together we walk into the age of Aquarius, a rebirth that will expand our minds, souls, and bodies, guiding us towards a more peaceful world where the signs of war evolve merely into a paragraph written in our history books only. Remember, no matter how many times you get knocked down, keep getting back up. Be the positive change that you want to see in this world. This has been the Professor's Corner on the Late Night Veterans Show. I'm the Professor, Reginald Angus Argue, pen name R.A. McLeod Argue. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Reg. Great poem there, and thank you so much. So, Adam, back over to you and Tim. Thank you.
Tim, hearing that harrowing story, you but dozens of other veterans, that wonderful ex-PM of yours, Mr. Trudeau, who stopped the truckers and was so keen for all this, has he mentioned anything this at all? I doubt it.
No, so what's going on is the government just wants to cover up everything, to be honest. Like, they manipulate the democratic system. They change the boundaries of the ridings. It's a lot of shady, really shady stuff.
Yeah.
And it's sad that it's not the Canada I believe I served for. Went overseas and risked my life for. I lost everything. I was incarcerated for a time, and I was fortunate to have asked for more time to go to a treatment center, which is something I kind of needed. No, I needed, not kind of. I did need.
Yeah.
But there's not many people that want to step up in the political realm to even approach Methicillin. So our Health Canada in 2017 basically said put a moratorium on it. So there's no evidence of any long-term side effects. They didn't do any testing. So even my doctor, I just saw her 2 weeks ago. All she knows about methicillin is what I tell her, because there's nothing in the system recognizing methicillin toxicity, basically.
Yeah.
And it really saddened me after 33 years is because they're doing damage control, in my opinion. It's huge. I think hundreds of thousands, not millions of people were given this drug, both military and civilians. And they didn't want to own that they damaged a high percentage of the people. And lots of people that were fine. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of them. And I was fortunate since I got some brain scans. They weren't analyzed individually for me. I'm getting some done through my doctor next month to try to have them officially diagnosed. But yeah, there's just so much corruption and cover-ups over here too, just like over there.
Yeah.
I knew about the party you're talking about with Johnson.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that in the news, and this, they're stomping on our freedoms over here too.
Yeah. That Trudeau was just appalling. I mean, I saw the way they sent in the police thugs to beat them all up. God knows, closed down their bank accounts for God's sake as well. I really felt for the Canadian people. And this is not, kind of say, it's not the first time the military has been used as guinea pigs. When you go back to the MK Ultra thing, that they used, and even recently we've had a movie over here, Young Washington, about 250th anniversary of America. I mean, even then they saw soldiers as expendable. They put the British Army, for God's sake, in red coats. And anyone that's done camming up would know that camouflage is an art. You put just enough green, just enough brown, but they put them in red. So no wonder we lost America. You might as well just sign your own death warrant as do that, in my opinion.
It was the cheapest colour, apparently, for the uniform.
That's why.
Poor guys. You're absolutely right. They see the military personnel around the world, certainly in the Anglosphere, as guinea pigs. When I spoke out about the COVID vaccines, I got approached by a veterans group regarding Gulf War syndrome. And I did a lot of research on that. That was in 91, multiple anthrax jabs. And I think they only gave them to UK personnel Americans, Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, and the Danish soldiers.
Right.
Out of the 37 in the coalition, countries in the coalition. And I've seen a lot of side effects from those jabs. But obviously not every, it's a good control because you've got 31 countries that didn't have any.
Yeah.
And Professor Norman Fenton, who's the top statistician in the country at the time, he was chair of the Turing Group. He ran the numbers on that. And he produced a report, which I took to Andrew Murrison, who's the Veterans Minister, in a private meeting. And you always know when it's a cover-up because there's never any civil servants in there to take the minutes, just me and him. I got the report. He wouldn't even touch it. And Norman Fenton is the best statistician, and he analysed all the injuries. And he said the chances of it not being down to the vaccines that they had before they went was 1 in 1.2 million.
Norman Fenton's been amazing. I've seen him speak a couple.
But I mean, he's been attacked, and they forced him to retire early. All he was doing was running the numbers on things. He doesn't do the research. He just runs the maths. The maths can't lie, and they got his students at his university to say they wouldn't be taught by an anti-vaxxer. All he did was do the maths.
I mean, there should always be freedom to ask questions. I mean, not even George Orwell himself could have conceived the way they used vaccines in any of his novels. George Orwell, who predicted that he was a creative visionary, in my opinion, but they couldn't have predicted this dystopia. Because there's nothing wrong with
the military. They know that if they tell you to roll your arm up and report for a vaccination, everyone's going to be in the line.
Yeah. I think a lot of soldiers did. And for a harrowing story, Tim.
We trust our system too. Like I wrongly trusted our government with my health.
Yeah, indeed. There's nothing wrong with questioning life. So I know we've only got so much time, but this Piers and Andrew, I mean, I used to read a lot of the love letters my grandfather used to send his wife back from Poland and Germany. He was a POW. And most of the time, what he used to ask was, how many more Christmases am I going to be out here for in freedom? We're looking at Tommies that got frostbite, their fingers. I know in Canada, I think he gets minus 40 sometimes. But yep. Andrew and Piers, did you ever, you thrived under the pressure, you're still here. Did you ever ask yourselves the question, I'm sure you did, how long can this shit show continue? Piers, would you like to say something about that? Piers? We can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Okay. You're very quiet, Piers.
Turn the volume up.
Can you hear us?
You're very quiet.
Can you hear us?
Not properly.
Oh, the host has muted us. The host.
Oh, he said you might have muted him, Darren.
That's better. Yeah, the host muted our mic. The host is now unmuted.
Yeah, we still can't hear you properly. Sorry about that. But Andrew, the most daunting thing, and I remember walking around during the scamdemic. How long can this continue? I think that was also part of the psyop, wasn't it?
It was, but I mean, I also did some research on thalidomide.
Yeah.
I mean, that was introduced by a company called Chemie Grünenthal, a German company that was formed after the war. They recruited their scientists from the former Nazis, and their lead scientist who developed thalidomide was a former Nazi who was named called Heinrich Mulke, and he was indicted for war crimes in Poland, but was never convicted. He created thalidomide. That drug was released onto the market as a anti-nausea drug, and it was specially for pregnant women to relieve the symptoms of morning sickness. What they didn't know, I don't know. But I mean, the drug actually crossed the blood placenta barrier, went into the fetus, and prevented something called angiogenesis, which is the formation of blood vessels. And that's why 90% of the babies died, and the ones that were born alive had terrible injuries.
Yeah.
That was withdrawn in 1961.
Yeah.
Grünenthal had an injunction on the papers in the UK not to run stories linking the birth defects to thalidomide. That was overturned in the Strasbourg courts in the 70s. And and it wasn't until 1972 that there was a debate in House of Commons about thalidomide, 11 years after the drug had been withdrawn for safety reasons. And I was warned by the Conservative government before they expelled me from the Conservative Party for speaking unpalatable truths about COVID vaccines. They told me that they were going to cover it up for 20 years.
Yeah,
they told me. And they wanted to jab the kids. And they actually warned me, and they said, if you carry on talking about this, you're going against the most powerful vested interest in the world, with all the personal risk for you which that entails if you continue to do so. That's what they warned me.
All of this is threats which need to be kept for the future. But how can I say? Understand?
I don't think they're going to get 20 years. We saw how Fauci performed. He had lots to say. Anthony Fauci, the head of the National Institute for Health in America, he was leading the worldwide response to the pandemic. He had plenty to say during COVID. He didn't have anything to say in front of the Senate hearing, though, did he?
No, the Fifth Amendment, yeah.
Fifth Amendment, I saw that.
Only 111 times he took it.
He made an absolute horse's ass of himself, didn't he? You know,
the crime of not giving evidence is probably a lot less than what he'd get convicted for if he told the truth, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting we speak here on a military foreman, but this in many ways is a war, because the World Economic Forum, as far as I'm concerned, is the head of the beast. I'll name some of the people that are associated with it, because apparently you don't really get a membership. I'll name some. Rishi Sunak, young globalist leader. Justin Trudeau, young globalist leader. Melanie Dawes, head of Ofcom, CEO of his faces on the World. Andy Burnham, our new unelected Prime Minister. World Economic Forum. Who the fuck voted for it? Why does it have so much power? And as far as I'm concerned, it's the head of the beast, and it's a criminal cartel. In my opinion,
we are being run by a criminal cartel, and they've corrupted all of our institutions. They've corrupted the military. They've corrupted our politics. They've corrupted science. They've corrupted the police and the judiciary. And I came to realise that not all the apples in all of our institutional barrels are rotten. There are some very, very good people, but all the people at the top of all the barrels are rotten. And that means that any apple that wants to rise to the top has got to be willing to rot, otherwise be corrupted. Otherwise, you can't get there. And let's face it, if you're the head of any corrupt organisation, one of your main jobs is that when you come to retire or move on, you've got to make sure that the person it takes over from you is at least as corrupt as you are, or the gig's up. And it's been going on through so many cycles. I mean, I honestly think that the UK is the most corrupt place in the world.
Yeah, I think so.
And we've exported it to Canada, Australia, New Zealand. They haven't sent it to us.
Yeah. I mean, even going back to, I think you mentioned, it's in common knowledge, Rishi Sunak putting money in the Cayman Islands before the scamdemic broke out.
He was a founding partner of Theleme Partners, and they bought 11% of Moderna for $500 million through a trust in the Cayman Islands in 2016. And he will have done very nicely out of that, won't he? I mean, that's just a coincidence.
Did you see
when he was Chancellor, after the first round of the pandemic, he gave Moderna, supposedly the company he invested in, £1 billion of taxpayers' money to build that new facility in Oxford, and contracts for at least 150 million doses a year for 10 years. And Canada have built a Moderna vaccine production facility, and so have Australia. All paid for by our taxpayers.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever see his resignation speech? He was speaking an absolute load of crap outside down the street. He made it just didn't make any sense.
I never saw. He was demob happy the day that he handed over to Keir Starmer. He looked like the happiest man out.
Yeah.
But also, as well, he knew that we were being pushed towards a war with Russia, and I don't know what it is. If we've got British personnel firing British missiles out of Ukraine at Moscow, Storm Shadows, the French were firing the Scalps, the Americans are firing their Attackums. I mean, we're at war with Russia, aren't we? And he told the generals, my models in the MOD, he told the generals, the admirals, and the air vice marshals that he didn't want to be a wartime prime minister. But I'll tell you, share something with you. Obviously, I was in Parliament already from 2010. Rishi Sunak came in 2015, and the day after that election, when we're back in Parliament, and we've got a new guy called Rishi Sunak, some pretty unimpressive little Indian guy who doesn't know where to hang his coat in Parliament. The talk of the tea room on that day was that we've got 2 new prime ministers in the tea room, Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. They already knew. And 17, when Kemi Badenoch came in, who's now leader of the Conservative Party, they said on the day that she arrived, she's going to be a future leader of the Conservative Party. They never said she'd be prime minister. These people are not. They're not elected. They're selected, and they're selected a long time ago. Cameron and Osborne was selected at Oxford for the job.
As you so rightfully say, Andrew, it's not democracy, it's an illusion of democracy, giving the impression of free. And it applies to anyone like Tim and Reginald here, anyone in the Anglosphere, the Commonwealth, whatever you want to call it. But our people are involved in a constant battle of attrition with the state.
I think we're in a spiritual war, though. I think it is good against evil now. That's why it doesn't matter about right and left anymore. They're just ways of dividing us. And we have got to stick together. Because we are many and they are very, very few. We're talking about probably 0.1% of the world population who have huge control over us, and they've got nearly everything, and they don't really want us to have anything at all.
Yeah, we have very good civil liberties groups in the UK. We have Liberty, we have Open Rights, we have Big Brother Watch. Very, very, very good. But it's been said that in a true democracy, we wouldn't need those civil liberties groups. In a true democracy, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Well, I really think we need a reiteration and a reinforcement of the English Bill of Rights, unalienable rights, which will protect all the people from future tyrannical governments. Because, we've got the Nuremberg Code, we've got the Helsinki Agreement, where people can bodily autonomy and all the human rights law. But I mean, since COVID, our governments have run a coach and horses through all of that.
Yeah, we've got Tim and Andrew here, both Canadians, and I'm sure.
I'm wondering for a second there, Adam.
Sorry,
could I actually, Piers? Could you actually share a little bit? I don't know if you caught what Tim was saying about Mefequin and Lariam. Could you share a little bit about your thoughts on that? The anti-malarium drug that's, it's done so much damage, not only in Canada, Britain, United States, and so on.
Well, absolutely. When I was near the start, I was speaking at Hyde Park against all of these things and warned people of many things, including not to take jabs and not to be masked. But all of these things go together, and it's appalling, for example, that now they're even using soldiers as guinea pigs. But the point I made quite early on was these things are dangerous. And I was physically attacked in the street by people who said, Piers, you're killing people, because I was telling them not to be jabbed. But now I get people coming up to me in the street and saying, Piers, you saved my life. Because they'd listened to what I said and they'd seen friends of theirs dying or getting ill. And I think the main point of what is going on now is that we are up against mega corporations, which a lot of them are Zionist operations as well, and they're imposing anything they can upon us. And these wars that are happening are really, a big thing to understand, because Britain should not be supporting Zelensky or Israel mass bombing in Gaza. We should be calling for peace conferences. That has to be the way forward. And if this general election comes, or if there's a by-election in Clacton, I intend to stand there to get into Parliament to fight for accountability in politics and in science, because all the main parties won't do it, and a lot of the other parties are corrupted as well. So Nicholas here, and then Nicholas from the does the Truth Hour on every Thursday with me outside the BBC to attack the conspiratorium narrative being manipulated against us at the moment.
And on the subject of the BBC, Piers, I mean, we're looking at the two CEOs, Tim Davie and Deborah Turnbridge, who resigned in disgrace after creating January the 6th, they lied about the President of the United States, whatever you think about them, and got hundreds of people to go into the White House. under the false pretense it was being attacked. They cost their lives. They got people jailed, and this is the evil of the BBC, the blatant bias corporation. And there's never been an apology in this, but they actually lied about the president of the United States. And can I say that was the biggest attack on the White House since the British Army burnt down the original in the War of 1812.
That's true.
It was incredibly
very true.
It wasn't Canada that did that either.
It was the Canadians. The Canadians.
You know, Canada did not do that. It was still controlled by the British nation until 1867.
Well, they had tried to invade Canada, hadn't they?
Yeah. They had. Yeah, War of 1812 was in 2 years. I think America had more losses. We nearly took America back, but I'm sure, Andrew, would you verify? You know, it's 250 years we're sitting here since the Battle of Independence, which was really our Vietnam. Do you think that when the World Economic Forum are in jail, which I hope they are? Do you think we need to have something similar to what Washington did in America with the founding fathers, like having free speech protected by law?
I even think America have got to do it again. Really, quite honestly, I think that's what we all did. I'm not sure they actually got away in 1776 or shortly afterwards. I think they still became part of a corporation, and they need to. We all need to break away from that. I think we can see the analogies. I mean, one of the reasons they wanted to harm our veterans around the world is they know that they're dangerous people for tyrannical governments.
Yeah.
They don't want veterans being fit and well.
Yeah.
They don't want them being fit and well because they're the people who will be on the front line if it comes to taking back control for the people.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that the globalists, they've got such control of the institutions. I'm not convinced they're going to let us vote our way out of this mess.
And Tim and Reginald, what is the feeling in Canada now amongst the Canadian people? Are they remorseful for sort of?
Well, you've got Mark Carney. I mean, he was an appalling head of the Bank of England, and it was the best day ever when he went. Well, bad for Canada and good for us when he went back to Canada, but it's appalling.
I didn't vote Carney. I did an interview in the past with Paul Hellyer, the late Paul Hellyer.
Yes.
The defense minister. The Pearson government. And actually, he went into detail and talked about the Bank of Canada, talked about Canada being trillions of dollars in debt. 2015, I sat down with him. It's on the internet. So I'm not voting for anyone that's part of the Bank of Canada.
Absolutely not that Carney. Just as sad as Trudeau, isn't it?
Well, did you say Carney the other day? He's actually said
I got something to say about that.
New world order. Well on the way to a new world order in Canada. It was unbelievable.
Well, you know what's tragic here in Canada? They're bringing in that assistant suicide.
Yeah.
And Dave Bono, he's someone that if you want to know Mefferquin, Tim's basically here. Dave's above him. Dave's the teacher. And Tim is even my teacher. But what happens is in the future, they're going to use the mental health as an excuse to carry out the assistant suicide.
Like PTSD, major depressive disorder, and that kind of stuff is what he's talking about. Yeah. They're opening that door, sadly.
And a lot of people would take it. A lot of people would take it. We used to have an organisation UK called Exit, the Voluntary Euthanasia Society, where they used to put a polythene bag over their head and sort of say goodbye. But now they're going to try and make it law. But can I just go over to Piers for a second? Piers, on your recent birthday, I remember you saying that.
Well, I'm 29 now.
Not everyone knows what is happening, and I think you remember you saying that not everyone knows what is happening. We're the lucky ones. At least we know the score, and I think that's an understatement. But what would you say separates us from them? Is it our life experiences that's made us skeptical about authority? We've got military guys here today. Is that's made it, or is it something else? What separates us from it? Is there one person?
You mean us and the people who
us, the so-called sheep, the collaborators? Yes.
Well, I think that is it. But we have to say things to get through to what we call the sheep, and I always do that. So try and find examples. And about the vaccines and deaths is really a very good way. As I said, if we hadn't spoken out at the time and it was difficult to speak out, then we wouldn't have succeeded. in getting. I think the majority now are sceptical about vaccinations, and if they tried another vax lockdown, it would fail. So they're thinking of other things. Now they're trying to get a climate lockdown, but all of a sudden it started raining and it's got a bit cooler when we said it would. I'm talking we, I mean weatheraction.com, which I also produce forecasts from. So if they try a climate lockdown, I think they'll be difficult there as well. So I'm not sure what they're going to try and do, but they're always trying to get something to take away our rights and limit our freedoms. Because right now there's a big attack going on air travel. I mean, they want people to be in 15-minute cities, and air travel is the last thing they want. So, you know, there's lots of attacks, direct and indirect, on air travel going on now. And I think Elon Musk is behind them, as I mentioned before, because he wants you to believe all sorts of stuff rather than know that this aluminium pollution coming to people, which gives you Alzheimer's and so on, comes from satellites. That's where it comes from. And there's 30 kilograms of that coming every day.
Piers has been very good on the man-made climate change hoax from the very beginning. But I sense that people are coming round, that people are realising this now. Don't you, Piers? Yes. I think we are winning the battle.
I think they are. They are, because people ask me, what's the weather going to do? And I tell them, and they wouldn't have asked me before. What I'm trying to do is get them.
They're confusing weather with climate, though, aren't they?
Oh, all the time, yes. I mean, I haven't got this graph in front of me, but, you know, this heat wave we just had in England and in Western Europe was also associated, because there's a high pressure and the air goes round the high pressure, with very cold weather in Russia. And the Arctic is actually having the coldest summer it's had for a very long time. So to equate warming in England and Western Europe with global warming is ridiculous. But
it's been very. I've heard it's been very cold in New Zealand as well.
Oh, yes,
unnaturally cold in New Zealand.
We're running a little bit on time, guys. Andrew, any news on the civil action being taken by the Dutch people in Holland this October? Do you think Gates will attend, or will he just ignore?
No, I don't think so. I went and attended the hearing where they applied. The applicants applied. I think there were 6 applicants. One, they were all vaccine harmed. One's actually died during the hearings. So you've got one barrister representing the victims. There's about 16 or 17 respondents. There were more black cloaks on their side than I've ever seen. 3 judges in Amsterdam. I don't think they've got the guts to stand up against Big Pharma, but it will get stuff on the record. And what I'll tell you is I followed those barristers that were highly paid lawyers being paid by the oligarchs and the elites. When they got outside, they got bodyguards. They got bodyguards when they got to get into their limousines to be taken away from the court afterwards. I couldn't believe
always
it.
Pay their lawyers a lot.
Yeah, and Tim and Reginald, you know, this scamdemic has been trying for all of us. It's had a negative effect. So it's had an impact on our behaviour. I think I can say that without fear of contradiction. Do you think things can ever return to normal, or is that a bit too much of a sweeping statement?
For me, actually, to slow me down, I was working full time then, and it was around the time I got my Veterans Affairs first claims. So I had a unique experience where it slowed me down, and I have a nice house with a big property. So I don't think it's going back to normal. And like the Big Pharma comment, I think Big Pharma is about around methaquin and lyrium too. I just want to add a caveat. So I think all the countries banned it or called it a drug of last resort, like Canada did in about 2017, maybe before. I'm not sure about the UK. Because he found out that it causes a lot of harm and they can't keep covering it up. But they're not acknowledging or recognizing it for people to be compensated or the troops to be looked after. And in Canada, they're actually, you know, they cut $4 billion from the Veterans Affairs budget. Yeah, they don't care. Like I think Andrew said it well. They don't care about veterans. They want to, you know, have us go away or be quiet. They
see veterans as a threat, and they don't really care about anybody. I mean, the vaccine compensation scheme in the UK, you have to prove 60% injury.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine if we had that for car insurance? I could run my car into yours, my fault, and I could say, "Oh, the front's all right. I'm not paying you anything." You know, that's what they're doing, isn't it? I mean, someone could be 59% injured by a vaccine, and they get not a penny in this country. I mean, in what possible situation is that correct?
Wow.
Indeed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And talking about Piers, going back to Piers, in the early days of the scandemic 2020, I mean, we could describe ourselves as street warriors. I remember taking you around the back of the embassy to stop you. How can I say? But we were followed by the police everywhere, weren't we? You know, through Trafalgar Square. But they weren't very good at it because we knew that they were following us. They're not that bright. But when did you first realise?
20 times.
20 times. And can I just say this? After your first arrest, did you realise it was the first of many?
Well, I thought there'd be a few more, but I must say, if you'd asked me, do you think you're going to be arrested 20 times within the next 3 or 4 years? I would have said, don't be ridiculous. But they've been arrested all the time. They came along in their vans with my picture because I said to them sometimes, "Hey, how do you know I was here?" I said, "Oh, we knew. We had your picture. We had to find you, Mr. Corbyn. That was on our brief." And that's what they did.
The thing is,
and
millions are
I
still
ran
not
them
awake.
sometimes.
Millions are still not awake. The meningitis.
Some police
they're
are
getting.
awake. Look, off the record, I can say some police are awake. I can't quote any of them, but I mean, you know, that inside the
But can I
police, there
just
are
say,
people.
if you think back, if you think back, Tony Blair brought it in that policemen and nurses had to have a degree. That's ludicrous. They don't need a degree, but that got them into the debt. That got them into the debt trap of the tuition fees, so that when they were asked to do things that they didn't really want to do, they didn't want to lose their jobs that they'd studied for and got all that university debt round their neck. And bear in mind that Blair was the man. After 17 years in opposition, when they got into government in 97, the first piece of legislation the new Labour government put through, which was never talked about, was never in their manifesto, their first priority when they got back into government after 17 years was to take the death penalty out of the Treason Act. He was surrounded, he's a lawyer, he was surrounded by lawyers. They knew they were going to commit treason against the people. They just didn't want to hang for it.
Yeah.
Tony Blair, is that the guy?
Education.
Tony Blair, that's the guy who Nigel Farage wants to be vaccine minister, isn't it?
He wanted him to be vaccine minister, yes.
It was.
Vaccines are, didn't they? But I mean, if you look,
I want to quickly interject there. We have about 10 minutes left,
right?
Before we ran out of time for the show. So Adam, just if you could wrap it up, Adam.
Okay, I've still got so many questions. It's such a big subject. We're trying to go over that. And thank you, Reg. I appreciate time's limited. But can I say, to sum this up, I think, and please tell me if I'm wrong, this war is unique. And I would say it's a war because there's never been a globalist coup d'etat like the World Economic Forum before in history. And alas, people don't know how to respond to it. They weren't meant to respond to it. And understanding criminal psychology isn't easy. It wouldn't be criminal if it was. You know, when you're trying to understand a motive for killing someone, then it's not easy. But I think one thing we can say without fear of contradiction is the globalist WEF oligarchs like Johnson, Sunak, they've all got one thing in common, and that is a class analysis. Most of them come from Eton. They're Etonians. And how can I say that they see themselves as something special above you? And they're bred to do this. I think they've got a saying at Eton. It says, "I was brought up at Eton. You're about to be eaten, then brought up." I mean, that's supposed to be funny for Etonians, you know. So I think that's a big part of the psychological profiling of it. The vax, and I think we would say, sorry guys, can I just quickly say this, Nick? The vax are hard work. I think although some are waking up, a lot don't have a clue. But let me say, it is sad a lot of them are getting damaged now. And I know there's people here that are vaccine damaged, but at the end of the day, collaborators will get you killed. They will take you to your coffin, they will take you to the grave, and they will leave you there, and they won't give a toss. I don't like to sound harsh, but we've been in a battle where a lot of the people that I know, and we've all known, still think the last 5 years has been normal. There are people like that. They don't want to confront it. They don't realise the WEF is still there, and sadly, but we know the score. We do know the score. In summarising the situation, please tell me, guys, our Canadian friends, if you think I'm going over the top there.
No. So I'll just add in there, Adam. So our former Deputy Prime Minister, Krista Freeland, or I forget what her first name is, she left the government. She's now over in Ukraine. I'm not sure what she's doing. I don't think it's anything good. I just want to keep it brief like that. And then, our prime minister wasn't voted in. He was slipped in. He wasn't even a member of parliament. It's just shady. So you're on. I think we hate the same way. Just it's just sad how we're kind of powerless in some ways. And the Democratic system's not working the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah. And can I just say, when we look back at McCarthyism, some of you remember McCarthyism, I think in the 50s in America, where anyone with potentially socialist views like Charlie Chaplin were ostracized. I think with Charlie Chaplin, they said he was Jewish. His name was Israel Feinstein. He wasn't. But they tried to make, because he had socialist views. So in a way, I think this is a form of McCarthyism. The only difference is the tyranny, and the reason most people don't want to talk about it, the tyranny is too much for them. And so the way I see it, in summary, is it's a battle of the subservient mindset, those who will follow orders and do anything, against a more analytical, critical thinkers like ourselves. And I know as soldiers and that we followed orders, but we still had a mind of our own. I mean, we've got a soldier here, Dale, forget his name, Dale, who he's a very free-thinking soldier. So, but with soldiers, there is a conscience clause. There are certain things that you can't do, like shoot the enemy, that go against the Geneva Convention, as you rightly say, the Nuremberg Code. So I think if I was to summarize, so this is ongoing. Unfortunately, I'd like to say this is the end, but I don't think it's going to be the end for some considerable time. Because
I think we're probably looking at 2 or 3 more shows with your guests there, Adam. A lot of information. Piers, can I quickly get you to share some final thoughts, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much. And this is Nicholas here. And I would like to get people to follow us on X at Piers_Corbyn. And on that Piers_Corbyn, we'll have all the information about every Thursday, for example, we're outside the BBC doing BBC Truth Hour, attacking their narratives, which are controlling us all through the conspiratorium, as we call it. And we stand there for practical action. I've already mentioned keep cash, but we've got to take down cameras. All of these things which we see are wrong with the New World Tyranny won't be defeated just by understanding them. It's going to be us on the ground. And if there's a general election, as I said, I will stand there against Nigel Farage in Clacton or wherever, because we've got to get people in Parliament, not because that is the way forward, but certainly in Parliament you can get certain things across to the public, as well as doing action on the ground. So I say again, come along to at Piers_Corbyn, Nicholas and myself. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I think it's important that the 2 big things the globalists want, the people who are against, they want digital ID around the world, and governments are in lockstep to try and deliver it. If we can stop digital ID, they can't deliver Agenda 2030. They can't deliver the Chinese social credit scoring model, which I think is what the world's elites have decided that's how they'd like us all to live. Obviously, they can never sell that to us in an election, so they have to do it by subterfuge, and that's what's going on. I also think we've got to be a reminder that the children are being indoctrinated in our schools. That's why when I give speeches around the country, the average age is well over 40, because the younger people, they've had the full indoctrination, and the longer this goes on, the less of us they're going to be. And it is very much, I think it's all about the future generations. If we don't win this battle, and there's only us, we're in the fight of our lives, the next generations will never know the freedoms we let go for them, and not on my watch.
That's what Darren and I are all about. We want to leave the world better than what we came into. And, in the past, I've done talk radio. So I've talked to over 400 people, different walks of life, politicians, everything sort of thing. And what I can say is that we do have a past, and I think we have to learn from the past, and we have to somehow teach the children, get them out of being indoctrinated. And
we've got to teach children in school, instead of teaching them what to think, we've got to teach people again how to think.
Exactly.
Critical thinking.
I like that. Sorry?
Go ahead,
and
Darren.
as I said in Parliament, in the clip I sent to Darren, we need to get the politics out of our science and get some real science back into our politics.
Yeah, as for that video, I put the
science and politics.
As for that video, it'll be in the description link as well. So please take a look at that and in the comments.
Okay,
we are coming to the end of the show, guys. So we do need to wrap up. But Andrew, Piers,
thank you,
and Tim, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. We can't thank you enough. We'd like to get you on again in probably 3 to 6 months.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you so much, Adam. Incredible host again. Reg, as always, you and your production team do a fantastic job. Can't thank you enough. Guys, this is the Late Night Veteran Show, episode 90. Much love.
There is 20.
God bless.
Yeah. God bless.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everyone. Great talking. And as you say, Reg, there's enough room there for another episode. Yeah. Thanks.
Oh, yeah. 2 or 3 more.
Thanks, Piers and Andrew. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you again, Andrew.
All the best. God bless.
I pledged allegiance to the flag God stood beside me. I swore an oath to my countrymen and kin. Side by side we sang our anthem oh so proudly. And this is where a soldier's tale begins. We left for foreign shores in the name of freedom, comrades in arms for the liberty of man. Shoulder to shoulder, but still could not redeem them in God's name, but no one could understand.
It's a good show.